Good evening, everybody. Good evening, Joe Waters, and welcome.
Good evening, Pat. Thank you.
And good evening to everybody. Welcome to this edition of SportsView on Monday, the 12th of June, 2023. And it's just gone past 8 p.m., 2000 hours Greenwich Mean Time here in Ireland. And this program will be up later on this evening for you to see it on all our usual channels. Don't forget to press the red button to subscribe to our channels. We're more than welcome. Now, Joe, obviously we'll be looking at soccer and rugby, tennis, golf, whatever take our fancy. We'll see how we go. But I suppose we have to start at this side of the world, anyway, at least, even though there's soccer played in other countries beside Great Britain. You know, we should remember that sometimes as well. But we were talking before we came on here, Joe. Man City at last won the European Cup, or the Champions League as it is now, and in a dour, workmanlike performance, in my opinion.
I'd agree with you. It wasn't a good performance by City. To be honest, I think that the two cup finals they've played in against United and in the Champions League final, they did not look themselves. They did not look good. The other teams were able to shut them down, and I just wondered. Milan, Inter didn't do a whole lot. I mean, they had some chances. How Lukaku missed that one is beyond me.
Oh, he missed two glorious chances.
It's like absolutely. But the header that he had anywhere else, and that's a goal
all day long.
Yeah, and then you'd have a look and see with the nerves, because City were nervy anyway. Even after they scored, I thought that they'd settle down and they'd keep the ball and move it around, but they weren't very convincing even after that.
You're right. And there's a few of their players I liked and I admire as soccer players, irrespective of where they're from. But I was surprised, Joe, that and I'm not an expert, I'm just an ordinary pundit. I was surprised Walker wasn't playing from the start.
Yeah, I think though that he was carrying a bit of an injury, and he didn't train all week, and then he kind of just got back in. So I think there was a little bit more to it than they were letting on. And,
yeah.
So I mean, because normally he would be one of the first guys that Guardiola would have out there. He's been very valuable for him.
Obviously, it's all over the papers, the local papers here on this side of the pond, about them creating history. The history they're created that they're referring to is they've won the FA Cup, their domestic league, and the Champions League. But Man United did it as well, but many other teams in Europe have done it a number of times, like Barcelona, Madrid, Bayern Munich, Milan, the two Milan, well, one of the Milans anyway, I know that. But what history are they referring to, Joel?
Well, I mean, that's the thing with it. They're referring. It's so typical of the British press that they blow everything out of proportion, and then when it doesn't work, they look for scapegoats. That they did it the last time when City lost to Chelsea in the Champions League final, and all of a sudden Guardiola overthought the whole thing. He thinks he's a tactical genius. He does this, he does that. And they build it up to be something great. And then when it doesn't work out, they tear people down.
They do.
And it is just, to me, it is the worst possible thing that you can do. To be fair to Milan, Inter, they did a terrific job. They worked their butts off through the whole game. They closed City down all over the field, and they didn't let City play.
No, and I think that in the first half, Joe, in the first half to me was Inter Milan's.
Yeah.
They neutralized Haaland, who seems to be a one-trick pony anyway, Well,
I mean, he was stuck with it. He was stuck with a difficult job, and again, Kevin De Bruyne going out injured. We don't know what was wrong with him. He's been having that problem apparently for a little while. So, it makes a big difference when your supply line especially to a guy like Haaland. Haaland is not a guy that's going to go away and win a game on his own field. He's not a guy that's going to come into midfield, pick up the ball, beat 4 or 5 guys and stick it in the back of the net. That's not the kind of a guy that he is. And when the supply line is cut off to him, then you have a much different player on your hands. And I think, Milan did their homework on City in the semi-final when Real Madrid went to City, and they just sat back off them. And we talked about this before. They get them the run of the Etihad, and it's like you can't do that with City. They're going to tear you apart if you let them have control of whatever. And we've seen it too many times in the Premier League. Now we've seen in 2 finals where United, not the best team in the country by any means, but they got, after a bad start, they got in City's face and they made a game of it. And Inter did exactly the same against City on Saturday. They got in their faces, they stopped them playing, they didn't allow them to do their tippy-tappy football, and they didn't allow them to have the patterns that they wanted. And they just got stuck into them, and they made a right game of it. And I think that, maybe other teams will look at this now and start going, well, you know what? Maybe this is what we have to do to stop.
I mean, you're right. Inter Milan showed how to play City in both games in the in the game tonight, and I think our Saturday night was. Sorry, I beg your pardon, but I thought for a final. I mean, finals are always tough affairs. We have to admit that, and this proved to be no different than any other final. Whereas none of the teams wanted to lose it, if you know what I mean. So hence they didn't go out to win it. But I thought Inter Milan won the first half, but I thought, they didn't create a whole lot either, and it was disappointing from a neutral point of view. But getting back to the thing about history, well, we have to leave that alone because, well, Nottingham Forest won the European Cup twice anyway. We know that, don't we?
Well, and Aston Villa have won it once.
They have, yeah. And Joe, I know that it's a lesser competition, but West Ham won the Europa Conference during the week. West Ham United, they beat another Italian team, Fiorentina, in the final. What's their names? Oh dear me! Didn't Sevilla beat an Italian team in the final?
Yeah, they did. And Roma. They beat Roma.
And Man City beat Inter Milan.
Yeah.
So we had three Italian teams in the final, and they all lost. Which is anyway. Well, West Ham did well. We have to. First of all, I know West Ham are down now. They survived in the Premiership, under Moyes. I think he's okay. I think he'd still be okay as manager of West Ham, even if they hadn't won the Europa Conference. That's my opinion only, anyway. Because there aren't a whole lot of managers floating around,
Well, there are not, and there's not a lot of managers that are floating around that can handle a team that's in the bottom half of the table.
That's right, and and West Ham, people must remember, West Ham will have European football next season, no matter what they're doing. So that's a big plus for the club as an attractive proposition for players who want to showcase their talent. So there's positives for West Ham, as well. Fair play to them. They won 2-1, and it was fair play to them. It was a good game. I enjoyed the game.
It was a good game. I thought it was a fun game. It really was.
I thought it was a better game to watch than the Champions League final.
It was. I think it was.
Yeah.
There was certainly more end-to-end stuff because West Ham kind of sat back and invited them onto them.
Yeah.
And then they were trying to break on them, and they were relying on that. And eventually, in the finish, they caught them out with one. They caught them a couple of times, but they were a bit unlucky. But with Jared Bowen's goal right at the death there, they caught him out exactly the way they wanted to. And it just, the Italians are having to go at West Ham about their, about their style of play and the caveman style of play and their tactics and what have you. You know what? Whose name is on the cup?
Yeah, who's the winner?
Yeah.
And West Ham, and I suppose we have seen Declan Rice play his last game for West Ham, have we?
Well, it's a funny thing. He was interviewed, or he was caught speaking to a young Hammers fan, and he was asked the question, "Well, are you leaving? Where are you going?" And he said, "I'm not going anywhere." So
yeah, but as you know, Joe, there's politics, there's the club, there's finances will play a role in his departure. But you don't know. I mean, if the player really wants to stay, you don't want to be buying an unhappy player.
No, you don't. But again, I would fancy it, and the owner, David Sullivan, said as much. He said we offered him 200,000 a week last year, and he said that it's not the money he wanted. That he wanted to play at a bigger club and be in the European Champions League every year and what have you. So they seem resigned to losing him. Yeah.
Now, Joe, one of the lovely stories over the weekend is my man. The man of the weekend, in my opinion, soccer-wise. He was born in the same year as myself, but that's not why I picked him out. His name, there's hope for me yet. His name is Claudio Ranieri.
The Tinker Man. I'm telling you, I am so happy. I'm so happy for that guy.
Claudio Ranieri was a legend in Calgary, Calgary. Yeah. And the last time he was managing Calgary, he managed them in Serie C. And he brought them all the way up to Serie A in Italy. They went phoning him and calling on his expertise again last January. They were actually halfway through their season. They had 19 games left to play out of 38. Ranieri came in and obviously did a fabulous job because they won 17 out of those 19 games, which was a phenomenal. They finished joint fourth, but on goal difference, they finished fifth then, which meant they had to go to a playoff against Barry over the weekend, and they beat him with a 94th minute winner. They beat Barry 2-1, and they're up to Serie A. And the scenes now, for people who don't know, Calgary is the capital of Sardinia. That's where it is in Italy. For people who mightn't know the geography of where it is, and there's 155,000 is the population there. So you can imagine they were all out celebrating over the weekend. But getting back to Claudio Ranieri, Joe, he's an unsung hero in my book for years. I mean, people forget he won the Premiership with Leicester City.
Yes, he did.
He won the Premiership with Leicester City, and we know Leicester got relegated. I'm not saying if Ranieri was there, they wouldn't. But Leicester are down in the Championship now, which is a pity. But I mean, you can imagine, like he did the business, Claudio.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. And I mean, for stuff like that to happen, everything has to just fall into place at the right time. I mean, the same thing with the season just gone in Italy with Cagliari. The same thing. I think what you were saying there, they lost 2 of the 19 games, but they won. I think they won 10 and drew 7.
Yeah,
is what it was.
Yeah,
and, they just. I mean, it was an absolutely masterclass by him.
It was
to where he got them. Unbelievable.
I think they were in 9th or 10th or 11th place when he took over. Now, obviously, he had to get into the top 4, but he got in giant 4th. But people mustn't forget, I think they don't want any good soccer people. He won the Champions League as well.
Yeah, where did he win the Champions League at?
Did he win the champion? Oh no, he didn't win it with Chelsea. Who was with Chelsea?
No. Di Matteo won it with Chelsea.
Well, I didn't bring my piece of paper that I had stuff written down. And he
Yeah.
managed AC Milan and all those teams as well down through the years, you know. And
Well,
as I said,
I mean, he's worked with top clubs in Italy.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, he's done. You know, I mean, I've talked about him before. My admiration for him is huge. I
yeah,
mean, he started this whole thing where, you know, two players for every position.
yes, you're
You know,
right. You're right.
and he got slagged about it, and he proved now everybody is doing the same thing.
Yeah, Ranieri to me. I mean, the English press dubbed him the Tinker Man, but it's irrelevant because how many times has the English press been wrong as opposed to being correct?
Well, exactly. You know,
Yeah.
so
But
they're
I don't
they're
know now. I couldn't find out. I was looking up on their website. Is he staying on next season or not? I don't know that, Joe. You know, but we let you know next Monday on the show because I'll do. The colours of the club are black and red for people who might know what it is. Calgary, but we look forward to their participation on Celia. We'll keep an eye on them during the year as well to be something else to do. SportsView is the program. Press the red button on the right hand side and tell all your friends about us to subscribe to our channel. Now, Uruguay won the World Cup, the Under 20 World Cup, over the weekend. For people who were following that, they beat Italy in the final. Uruguay. You remember Uruguay won the first World Cup, didn't they? 1948, was it?
19.
Was it?
Was it 1928?
1928 is They won the World Cup twice, didn't they?
Yes, I think they won it. Well, yeah, they won it in 1928, and then they won it.
Yeah.
They won it again in Brazil, beating Brazil in the final.
Yeah, Uruguay.
In the Maracana.
Yeah, their under 20s won the World Cup, and this the under 20 World Cup to beat Italy in the final. And Israel came third. They beat Korea for the third and fourth playoff. Now, obviously, Joe, I know you hear over the weekend, Messi is on the move. He's joining Beckham.
Yes.
And obviously, there'll be a huge income. Let's be cynical. There'll be a huge income on the merchandise from, what are they called? Inter Miami?
Yes.
Inter Miami. Is it?
Yeah.
And where are they now, soccer-wise, Joe, over there? How are they?
To be honest, they've not been doing very well. Phil Neville was the coach there for the longest while.
He's gone.
He just got fired, got relieved of his duties. So I don't know who's coming in, but I would imagine it would be a high-profile guy that's going to come in. But yeah, there's big things expected, and you know, I mean, they're kind of an expansion team, you know, and playing with an expansion team in this country is very, very difficult. In any sport, there's only one expansion team really that's ever done it well, and that was Las Vegas in ice hockey. And the reason they did well was because they changed how they did the system.
Yeah.
That you could take two people from the top half of any club's roster.
Yeah.
So they managed to get all this group of players together that was absolutely phenomenal, that no expansion team ever had before. You used to get players that were at the bottom end of somebody's roster. You know, you never got ones that were at the top end of it.
Yeah.
So, and that's the way it is. You know, I mean, yeah, to get yourself going with established clubs that have been here for a while, and to break in and make it work is very, very difficult. You've got to get everything right. You got your draft choices have got to be good. You know, your foreign players have got to come in and work perfectly, and it's been very difficult for them to make their way through it.
As we said a few times on the show, or you said on your side, we know that the money for sport in the States is in the NFL, in basketball, in ice hockey as well. there isn't a whole lot, not a whole lot, there's still a lot, but you know what I mean, in
Yeah.
golf as well. So soccer is a good bit down the pecking order for this huge investment that's required from time to time, you know. So as you said, they have to scrap for all the dollars they can get, you know, in professional soccer in the United States. So you can understand at Woodside why Messi would be attractive to a club like Inter Miami, you know, merchandising, raise the profile of the club. You know, I can understand why they do it, you know.
Yeah.
I think he has another couple of years left in him anyway, you know. That's Messi himself, you know.
He definitely has a couple of years, and I mean this is a huge deal, you know, in terms of what's going on here, because you know everyone's looked at all these players going over to Saudi Arabia and what have you, and getting all these big contracts.
Yeah.
So the MLS turned around and said, we can't have another superstar going over there. You know, if we lose out on the likes of Messi and people like that, these are the ones that are going to start taking over, and they're going to be the ones that are going to have the big guys coming in, and they had to make a move that was a big move that spoke about their intent of what they want their league to be, and this is a huge statement. I mean, a huge statement for them.
Good evening, John Lonergan.
Good evening, Pat. Good evening, Joe. How are you?
Good evening, John. How are you?
How are you?
Very good.
As a man said, how you doing? Do you remember that? Was that Joey? Was it? In Friends. How you doing? Well, John, you just came in now at the right. Well, there's always a right time to come in. We were talking about what's his name, Messi going over to Inter Miami, David Beckham's club. You know? And to raise, we were saying it'll give a huge boost to the club and obviously raise the profile of soccer yet again in America. But just before we go away from soccer, did you see the Champions League final?
I did.
Did you watch the whole lot of it?
I did. But I was in a pub, so whether I remember it all or not is another thing.
What do you think of it?
It was a poor game in my estimate. I was expecting it to be a way better game, but I can understand the nervousness, obviously. But I thought Guardiola again was very lucky. I thought he picked the wrong team. No, you can turn around and say, but sure, he still won it. But I thought his selection was, he played to them again, you know.
Yeah.
Like the last time they were in it, he cost them the league. He cost them because he changed the team. And when I saw the lineup, I just went, "Oh my God, he's after doing it again."
And what about Haaland? He was a passenger for the whole match.
But he's been a passenger for the last 3 or 4 games.
But
the thing is that he's now occupying centre halves more. Like at the start, we say when he was on his really good run, nobody was picking up because City weren't playing the way that they're playing now.
Yes.
No, that's my opinion on it. Anyway, Joe, I don't know what you think, but they in the last, like the FA Cup final, the last 2 league games, and the Champions League final, like his runs were mediocre. But then at the same time, I think Kevin De Bruyne was carrying an injury for the last month, and therein lies the problem.
And are you saying, John, before we go to Joe, tease this out, are you saying Man City have no one to replace Kevin De Bruyne with all the billions invested?
They have in Foden, right? But Kevin De Bruyne plays, like, it's very hard to in my opinion, to replace Kevin De Bruyne from the way he plays. He seems to be, he's like, I know it's stupid probably, but he's like Messi the way he finds pockets of space all over the pitch, and he covers in a multitude of ground, and his passing ability is fabulous. And I just thought for the last month he was off the pace, and hence Haaland hasn't scored in the last 4 games, as far as I remember.
Yeah. What do you think, Joe, of that?
Yeah, I agree with John. I mean, Haaland is, we've said earlier, we spoke a little bit about it. Haaland is not a guy that's going to come back into midfield and pick a ball up and beat 3 or 4 guys and stick it in the back of the net.
Oh.
He's a guy that has to be fed. He has to be fed. The wide players, the fullbacks have got to get overlaps and get crosses in, and they weren't able to do that. And John, I talked a little bit earlier. I totally agree with you. I mean, Man United, in spite of going a goal down in the first 10 seconds, 20 seconds of the game, or whatever it was, rallied around, and it made it very difficult for City in the FA Cup final.
Yeah.
And they got in the faces of the guys that are the playmakers. And if you don't have the guys getting on the ball like Gundogan does, and the Portuguese guy,
Bernardo Silva.
Yeah, and I mean, he's a terrific player, and Inter did exactly the same to him on Saturday. They stopped the supply line. They stopped those guys playing, and Haaland then becomes
redundant.
A luxury that you can't. Now Foden came on and he did a fine job. He should have scored when he went through that time.
Yes,
he just didn't get enough on it to put it in the far corner. But I mean, it was a great run, and he has terrific potential. But
he's a fine player.
He's a fine player, but you know, De Bruyne is on a different level. You know, he's on a different level. He can beat you by going past you, and he's got a range of passing skills that are they're just mind-boggling what he can do with the ball. And you know, I was reading in the paper this morning, he's apparently been carrying that hamstring injury for a good while, and it finally caught up with him. You know, and that is when you shut that down, Bernardo Silva and Gundogan, and now Kevin De Bruyne is not able to do what he does. Then you know you're cutting out the heart and soul of the City midfield that plays. And luckily enough, Rodri was able to pick up the slack and score the goal for them. But it was in the 2 finals. I think that's the poorest I've seen City perform for in any 2 games that they've played.
And John, of course, West Ham won in Europe during the week. I know people might scoff it, but at least, I mean, West Ham are down, fairly. They just survived, but they'll have European football next year.
Well, you see, you know, there's an old saying, and Joe would agree with that, like, a trophy is a trophy. And I can never understand clubs who don't play the strongest teams. And my club, Leeds United, are as bloody bad as anyone else. But not playing your strongest teams in any cup competition.
Yeah.
But you see, the financial thing of the Premier League is what's stifling these competitions. And the likes of Manchester City and Manchester United can play reserve teams in the earlier rounds. And that, to me, is degrading the competitions. That's my opinion on it.
Or particularly the cup competition, you know. And we were talking before you come on, John, about my favourite man of the weekend. I know we're repeating a bit now, Joe, but my favourite man, he's up there in front of you now. Claudio Ranieri brought Calgary into the Serie A over the weekend. He was appointed there in January to do a job, and there he is back in Serie A with Calgary.
I saw his emotional response. My God, it was brilliant.
Yeah,
it just shows you that when you have a passion for the game and a love for the game, that it does come through on certain players and at the right time, at the right place.
Yes,
that's when it can happen. And look what he done at Leicester. Just as backwards they've gone now since.
Yeah. Well, they've been relegated, you know, but what's his name? Ranieri. I don't know, as I was saying to Joe, I didn't follow all up. I don't know, is he staying with them next season or not? I'm not too sure of that. Has he been?
I'm not certain either, but I believe it was only a temporary They didn't believe that he could get them up, you know.
Yeah, he was brought in to do a job, and as we mentioned earlier on in the program, we're here every Monday night. SportsView is the program on nearmedia.tv. Press the red button to subscribe to our channel, and you're more than welcome to come on if you want to have an opinion on anything. And most Irish people, and need expats and all, everybody over there in Seattle, if they have an opinion, they can come on and join us any day of the week. Now, we'll just briefly touch on the GAA over the weekend, John. Just in the road from me here, Limerick beat Clare in the Munster Hurling Championship. The historic 5 in a row they did in Munster, which is not many teams that have done 5 in a row in senior hurling in Munster. And Limerick, this is the first time ever doing it. And you must, whatever you think opinion of Limerick hurling team is a different scale, but for that bunch of players to achieve 5 Munster titles in a row, it was just astonishing to me in this modern age where fitness and skill and running and the whole speed of the game, to keep them fresh, I know, okay, they won it by a point, but a point is as good as 100 points. And did you see that match, John?
No. And I think I've told you before, if it was outside my window, I wouldn't match it.
Right.
I'm not a GA man, but I have lots of friends who follow Cork around everywhere. And I was saying it to them way back in the league and everything. And I said, listen, Limerick are only interested in one thing, the Munster and the All-Irelands. And I said, for any team to beat them is going to take a monumental effort.
Absolutely.
They remind me of the Liverpool and the Manchester United teams who always peaked at the right time near the end of the season.
Yeah.
And I just think that's what Limerick are doing now.
Yeah.
There's a type of professionalism about them.
Yeah.
That they can, their analysis and their fitness coaches know exactly when to peak them. Now, I could be 100% wrong, as I said, I haven't seen it, but it didn't surprise me when I heard it did one again, you know.
And did you see any of that, Joe, over the weekend?
I didn't get to see any of it. I followed it on the ticker tape thing that you do.
Yes.
And it was, and you know, I mean, oh God, that just drives me mad watching that, because it's so far behind what's going on, you know.
Yeah.
But you know, I mean, fair play to Clare. Clare have given them a right good run through all of this.
Last year as well, yeah.
Last year as well, you know, and having teams like Clare and Cork the other week when they played them, they're the teams that set you up for later in the competition, because if you don't have those games under your belt, honest, then
in any sport, you're right. In any sport, you need those tests, and indeed
you do. You need somebody to be knocking you all the time, and you having to come up with the answers to it and find a solution to it. And that, I mean, there's great credit to those guys that from the leadership all the way down to keep them focused. You know, and I mean, they've said it. I've read them. I've watched them. I've watched what Kylie has said all the time. You know, the noise outside is the stuff that causes you problems. It's not the noise inside.
Yes.
It's the noise outside. And that's the stuff that gets in the way.
Yeah.
And it's the people around you outside in your sphere outside of the team. When you're in the team, no one goes in there and they're talking about, we're going to do 5 in a row here, lads.
No.
They don't talk like that in the dressing room. They're talking about, lads, here's another game. We got to win this one.
Yeah.
And just like you said, 20 points or 1 point, it's still only a win.
Yeah. And now Kilkenny obviously won the other one just to finish the GA. They beat Galway with a last-minute goal. They won by a point. Now, for people in permutations, both Limerick and Kilkenny are in the All-Ireland semi-final at each side. On the other side, then, we have Clare, who are meeting the winners of Dublin and Carlow. So Clare will be meeting Dublin, we'll assume. And the winners of Clare and Dublin will meet Kilkenny in the other semi-final, and the other side then will meet Kilkenny. On the other side then, Tipperary will be playing Galway in that quarter-final, and the winners of that will meet Limerick. So Limerick will be playing Tipperary or Galway in one semi-final, and Limerick will be playing the winners of Clare and Dublin in the other semi-final. So, no, it's the other way around, I beg your pardon. It's the other way around. So Limerick can't get Clare again until the final if they meet. But they could meet again in the All-Ireland final, which would be a third time this year, which I think is a big anomaly in a knockout competition. You know?
It is. It is.
Yeah, it is. I thought about that, and it's really strange.
I mean, you could Limerick and Clare in the All-Ireland final. I mean, I'm not saying it wouldn't be attractive, but after seeing them Clare beat them by a point, Limerick beat them by a point, so the next match should be a draw then, shouldn't it?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I mean, it's really interesting, but you know, you look at the 4 teams in Munster, you know, and you look at them in any order you want: Tipperary, Cork, Clare, and Limerick. You know, I mean, that's just a group of death right there in their own challenge.
Exactly, yeah.
It is.
You know, I mean, it's so unfair that, you know, when I was a young fella, I used to, and I was following hurling, I was following GAA and what have you, and you know, we always had Cork and Tipperary. They were the powers of my when I was a young fella.
Yeah.
And I always thought it's so unfair to Limerick, because a lot of the Limerick fellas I knew because I was in school with them at Sexton Street CBS.
Yeah.
So we used to follow them around in the Hartley Cup and go to the final and stuff like that. And so I knew all these guys, and Cregan and Grimes and the Hartigans, when they all played with Limerick and what have you. I always thought it was so unfair that Cork and Tipperary were in Munster, and if we had played in some of the other provinces, we'd have been moving on to, you know, All Irelands and what have you.
You would,
But here we are again in the same situation. You know, you've probably got 4 of the best teams. You put Galway and Kilkenny into it, and you're probably looking at the 6 best teams in the country.
Well, John, I was in in Cork in a league match between Limerick and Cork in the National Hurling League back in the 80s. Eamon Cregan scored 4 goals and 2 points for Limerick that day, and they still lost.
Yeah.
Against Cork, you know.
Yeah.
Can you imagine, like, I scored 4 goals and 2 points. We're not slagging them off. It's just a fact, as you said. It's just a fact. But it's not that the Cork was superior to Limerick. It's that the mentality as well has to be right, you know. If you believe that you can never beat this team, you'll never beat them, no matter how good you are. It's like the tennis, which is nice to get along. Novak Djokovic won his 23rd Grand Slam title over the weekend against Casper Ruud, one of the young bucks coming up. I watched. I had a split screen. I had a split screen on between the hurling and the tennis. Sounds very grand, doesn't it?
Doesn't it? Yeah.
It sounds very grand.
You just don't want to say you have 2 televisions and don't want.
No.
And hey, one of them is a black and white one.
Yeah, so the one television. My son set it up for me, so I had 2 screens on at the same time. I had the sound on in the hurling, but after the first, I mean, Casper Ruud went 3-0 up against Djokovic, and I said to myself, Djokovic is going to win this, because I looked at the way Casper Ruud, I looked at his body language. I'm not an expert. I looked the way and I think he was a bit shocked that he was 3-0 ahead. But Djokovic won the first set 6-3.
How many times has Djokovic done that? He's done that all through his career. He gives these guys a false sense of hope. They relax a small bit, and then before they know it, they're set down, and then they're 6-0 down in the next one, and so they're beaten then, you know.
And the same with the great with Alcaraz in the semi-final. Alcaraz was sitting in his seat after the first set. I was watching that, and he could not believe that the set was over. I knew by his features that the set was finished, and he was sitting on his seat, a set down against Djokovic, you know. But he's a phenomenal tennis player. He's won his 23rd Grand Slam. Who's to say that he won't win any more if he stays injury-free? Next up is Wimbledon. we'll see from there, you know. But hats off to Novak Djokovic. And he's now again world number one. He's won all the majors at least 3 times, which is a unique record as well. So there you go. You can't.
But he's never won all 4 in the same calendar year.
No, well, he was denied that last year because of the carry-on, because of the COVID crap, you know.
The mafia passports.
Yeah, Jesus. Lads, do you know something? When you look back at that now, you have to really laugh at yourself and say, this was a height of nonsense.
We were led down garden paths. There was somebody, just to go after time, there was somebody put up on Facebook last week a shot of people at a concert 2 years ago, and they all inside in pens, right? In little pens like sheep. And
I put that up.
Wait, did you? When did we become sheep? You know, and like it's so apt, Pat.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But that was Novak anyway, and Roger, our man from Cork. Oh, by the way, John, the funeral of the weekend. I know, Joe, you probably heard Teddy McCarthy died. Yeah. He died in his sleep, I believe. He died in his sleep last Monday night. Was it Tuesday? Teddy McCarthy. That's just right. a month shy of his 58th birthday. Yeah. Teddy McCarthy is the only GAA player in history to win an All-Ireland medal in hurling and football in the same year. That was in 1990. Well, I was at the hurling, I wasn't at the football. Well, do I remember 1990 he won his 2 All-Irelands. He was a supreme. No, it's easy to talk about someone that did, but Teddy McCarthy was a phenomenal athlete, and I think he would have excelled in any sport, you know. And a self-effacing, unassuming man. I met him twice ever. And it's just such a tragedy for his wife and kids. That and his son said a lovely eulogy over the weekend, and of course they had a minute silence all over the thing. I saw him playing a few times, John, but you know about Teddy anyway yourself, being up there.
Yeah, I met him a few times myself. No, as I said, I'm not following GA or anything, but I've had to come across him a few times, and down in Sarsers in Glenmire, and he was a very nice guy.
Yeah, Teddy. Yesterday, good on him, and may he rest in peace. That was Teddy McCarthy, one of the icons of the thing. I suppose looking forward to next season and soccer-wise, I mean, Brendan Rodgers is I saw on some of the sports commentary today, Brendan Rodgers is being associated with Leeds United, John.
Yeah, I think, I don't know whether he'd come down to the championship to go back up again. I don't think he would, but you know, if he did come, I'd be happy with Brendan Rodgers. I'm hoping they'll go for the fella guy, Daniel Farke, who used to be with Norwich City.
Oh yeah.
He got Norwich promoted twice, and he got him relegated as well. But they never spent money for him, so he was literally dealing with the same players. But seemingly the San Francisco 49ers are after buying Leeds, and they've promised a bucket load of money, which they have loads of. And so that's what I'm hoping on anyway, something like that.
Oh my God, Dan Marino, did he play with the 49ers?
I was
Joe Montana.
Joe Montana. Thank you, Joe. Joe Montana.
Yeah.
So Joe Montana could be a director of Leeds United. Wouldn't it be fantastic?
Yes,
I don't think he's going to be, but
no, he's not.
Did I see this morning? Was I mistaken this morning? I saw him on the Celtic fan things that they were talking about Brendan Rodgers going back to Celtic.
Yeah, well, as well. The speculation there as well, you know.
But then I saw that in another part of it, or in it somewhere else, that they were talking about the assistant manager at Manchester City becoming the Celtic manager.
Yeah, I believe they interviewed him, or they made an approach, but I think he's staying where he is.
Yeah.
I think he's staying where he is, especially after winning the Champions League. I think he's yeah. But they did approach him, and as far as I know, he's staying where he is, and that's why the Brendan Rodgers thing is coming back up now. You know.
It would take a lot of money to get Brendan Rodgers to go into the championship.
But
yes, it depends on the plan. Sorry, Pat. It depends on the plan, and like as a Leeds United fan, like we're in the dark regarding what's going on, because the buyover only happened on Saturday.
Mhm.
And actually, Joe, you might be interested. I actually had a meeting with Eddie Gray on
Oh, you
Saturday.
did?
Yeah, I actually have a photograph with him. He was in Cork doing a thing with the Leeds United Supporters Club, and we asked him a few questions, and he himself personally would like Steven Gerrard and Gary McAllister. No, the Leeds fan base don't want Steven Gerrard.
No.
But it's funny, Eddie Gray that actually came out and said it at the meeting on Saturday.
Wow.
That's interesting. But how good a manager, lads, is Brendan Rodgers?
You see, again, it depends on every manager. I'm sure, Joe, you'll probably know more about it than I do. You were playing it higher than I did, but you have a plan, right? And either a 2, 3, or 4 or 5 year plan, and you have to have your spending, your ins, your outs, all kind of ducks in a line, and that's why the likes of Brendan Rodgers, when he was when Leicester won, when he took over at Leicester, they didn't spend the money that they were supposed to spend. They were trying to live on the James Maddison, the Jamie Vardy's, these guys.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that's what happened to Rodgers. Maybe he got disillusioned then, and because I couldn't believe the way that they had gone so bad, you know.
Well, I think that there's a couple of things that happened there. And it was sometimes it's just something out of your control. And we were talking about it there a minute ago.
Yeah.
The COVID thing, right? The COVID thing hit so many people so hard. And it hit clubs really, really hard. And it came at a time that it not only affected, no fans. Of course, all the clubs had the same issues with no fans there and what have you. But for Leicester, it was a huge blow because King Power lost up practically all their money, all their ways of making money. There was no travel, and we all know they make their millions on duty-free stuff.
Yeah.
There's nobody traveling. There's nobody flying. There's nobody buying stuff in the airports and what have you. The whole thing. And then not only that, but prior to COVID, they'd embarked on that $100 million or £100 million new training ground that they built in Leicester.
Yeah, I forgot all about that, Joe. Yeah.
So they had 100 million. Now the owners don't have the money to put into it, and it was just a perfect storm that just engulfed them. And I don't think they were able to find their way out of it. And they weren't able to get the money. And to be honest, some of the people running the club are not up to task. They make poor decisions. They brought in people and paid them a lot of money, and these guys were not playing. Now, I don't think that Brendan Rodgers is without some kind of blame here, because he fell out with Soyuncu, and I don't know why he fell out with him, because when he came back and played in the team at the end, he was their best central defender.
Yeah.
And of course Johnny Evans came back for a little bit, and he was a huge loss to him. But he missed half the season, and that was a huge. I mean, if Johnny Evans plays half of the games that he missed during the season, Leicester City would have stayed up.
Yeah,
that would have been 8 games.
They probably would. Yes, that's a fair point.
That would have been 8 games that he played in, where he's a hugely influential player, and they would have got probably 5, 6, 7, 8 points, something like that, and they'd have been out of danger.
John,
well, the same could have happened to Leeds, because
John, we lost Tyler Adams.
John,
I have to cross it before I forget it.
Go on.
What did you ask Eddie Gray at all about our hero here in Limerick, Big Sam, getting the job?
He was asked, and
Was
he
he?
said he was, and he said no. He said he came in. If he had come in before Gracia, there might have been something there. But the objective for the future, as what Eddie Gray sees it, is that we need somebody with a 5-year plan, not a what would I say, a fireman. Yeah, a fireman. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Because
that was the reason.
I mean, Sam Allardyce is a good, in my opinion, is a good manager, and your man is very astute as well. He's one of the men I admire in the Premiership is Roy Hodgson's. You know.
Yeah, but again, like they probably made the right decision, Crystal Palace, because he knew the club, if you know what I mean. He was there previously.
Yes.
He brought in Sam Allardyce, who didn't know the club, didn't know
Yeah.
the running, with only 4 games to go, which was suicidal. But you know, like as I was saying before that, we had Tyler Adams, and if he didn't get injured for us,
Right.
I reckon we wouldn't have gone down.
Yes.
Because he'd have stopped all them midfield balls going through and all that. No, I get that. It's all hypothetical, Joe, you know. As you're saying.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, it's the same with Leicester. I mean, they only made a change with Brendan Rodgers with 6 or 7 games to go.
Yeah.
I mean, what chance has Dean Smith got to work anything in that short period of time?
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah.
You know, if you're going to get rid of somebody, you've got to give the person coming in enough time to do the job.
Exactly.
You know, I've seen it. I'm telling you, you know, you're talking about it. I saw it when I was at Leicester just before I left to go to Grimsby, and I was in the first team squad. We played Leatherhead, and Leatherhead are a non-league club, right? They'd beaten Millwall in the previous round, and they drew Leicester at Filbert Street, the old Filbert Street.
Yeah.
In the FA Cup. And Chris Kelly was playing for Leatherhead at the time. And he was the big guy in scoring goals in the FA Cup at the time and what have you. And they came to Filbert Street. And Jimmy Bloomfield was kind of a manager that really believed in experience. You know, you can't beat experience. And the age-old one goes, well, how do young players get experience if you don't play them? You know, they're never going to get experience. So a lot of us were stuck in a situation where we all moved on to lower division clubs to rebuild our careers because it wasn't happening for us.
It wasn't happening.
There. So we're playing the FA Cup and we're 2-0 down at Filbert Street to Leatherhead, a non-league team. This is a first division team that in the semi-final of the cup the year before, I think, right? And Jimmy Bloomfield is that close to being sacked. If that result stands, we are so close to going 3-0 down. Leatherhead attack, they go through, guy shoots the ball, Steve Earle comes out of nowhere, centre forward, next to Frank Worthington, recovers, comes out of nowhere, slides, and keeps the ball out the back of the net. We go on and score 3 goals in the second half and win 3-2. And Jimmy Bloomfield's job is saved. You know, I mean, that's the difference between the game and what have you. And Jim's philosophy was great. You know, he bought Keith Weller for $100,000. He bought Alan Birchnell for $100,000. He bought John Samuels. He bought Jeff Blockley for $105,000. And then he brings in a couple of other guys, but they're not what was, you know, he's trying to fit square pegs into round holes. You know, we signed Brian Alderson from Coventry, and he's a left-sided midfield player, and he decides he's going to play him on the right-hand side. You know, so it's just the manager gets something in his head sometimes, and it just doesn't make sense what they're trying to do. And I think that's what happened a little bit with Leicester, you know, with Brendan. and I think he got a bit disillusioned. Now, a lot of the players, Yuri Tillmans and guys like that, they're all down tools.
Definitely, Joe. I couldn't believe Tielemans. Like,
Yeah,
God, that guy, I thought he was going to be the next best thing. I thought they'd never keep hold of him, you know?
yeah,
I thought he was going to be sold for at least 100 million.
yeah.
And
you
suddenly,
know, you're right, John. They should have sold him when they had the chance.
yeah,
Because you know, with all the stuff that we're talking about, with the COVID that hit, and then the drop in finances for the for the owners, and then the money that they're having to pay to build the new training facility, they should have got money in for Tielemans and Maddison.
Madison, yeah, without a doubt, yeah.
And they should have sold them, and they should have got a couple of newer guys in that they could tie up for a little bit longer, but at least get that big money from it. Don't lose them for nothing.
Exactly.
Yeah. You know,
since both of you are talking about teams with L, Leeds United and Leicester City, but another team, one of my that I follow all the time, was Luton Town. I'm afraid to tell you, lad, they're on the way up.
Well, we waved them on the way down.
It's amazing how that ground is allowed to be used in the Premier League.
Well, no, it's not. They have to spend £15 million sterling to bring it up to standard, and there was a deadline, but they may have to forfeit the first couple of games in the season because it may not be ready, you know. But
because I remember
in the club is stunning.
Like, although what they've achieved is amazing. It's fantastic. It's fairy tale stuff. But like Leeds United had to put in, I mean, we had up to date stadium lights, and we had to put in 2 big towers that we used to have way back in the 60s. We had to put back in 2 new towers just for the television rights, just for the television, so that the pictures.
Oh yeah, have you? Yeah.
So I can't understand how Luton Town, that small ground, is. Like, did you see the entrance for the away supporters? It's underneath. It's in between 2 houses. Like, there's two bedrooms up over the entrance to the ground. Like, it's fantastic.
I'll tell you, they'll be quiet.
Well, you saw the story, didn't you? Yeah. That when the manager of Luton Town now was manager of Watford at the beginning of the season.
Rob Lowe, is it? No, what's his name?
That was who was that again? Who was the manager of Watford at the start of the season? But Kenilworth Road, I've been in it a few times, way back first in 1973. But you know, it's one of those old grounds. It reminds me, John, of Loftus Road as well, where the stadium can almost touch the players.
On it. Yeah,
and you know, it's one of those compact old style soccer grounds. Which brings back the soul of the game to me anyway.
Well, that's like Ellen Road at Leeds, you know. It's and it's the same with Joe's frozen there, but I know Leicester's is the very same.
Yeah,
you know, the fans are very close, and there's a great atmosphere created, you know. Whereas you go to the West Ham Stadium, you go to Tottenham Stadium, you go to Arsenal Stadium, it's very hard to get the atmosphere that you have in those that we have in these stadiums, you know.
It is, because I mean, I noticed myself now at the GA matches. I was at the Cork Limerick match in the Gaelic grounds. I must compliment the Gaelic grounds in the sense that you were pretty close to the play, very close to the play. It's pretty compact, you know. Whereas in Croke Park, if you're up in the first or second tier, you are a bit, you're pretty well removed.
You're alienated, yeah,
a little bit, but still the atmosphere, you can still see the game, like, but nevertheless, I know what you mean. But I think Luton, as you said, Luton Town, we've spoken about them enough from here. Luton Town have indeed, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a fairy tale for them.
Yeah.
I would be conscious of the fact that they will find the going very tough, you know, but that doesn't take away from the romance of the thing, you know.
It's very tough. I mean, the fitness levels in that division alone. I mean, myself and Eddie Gray agreed on Saturday that Leeds United weren't fit enough this year. after Marcelo Bielsa left.
Yes. Oh, yeah, I forgot about
their
that.
fitness levels went down. All the players down tools, as in they weren't going to do all the running they'd done before. And they, like your man Marsh, when he came in, Bielsa got beds made at the training ground. He got 2 rooms done up where they had beds, and the players would go for a nap during the day and come back training then later on. Marsh came in and got rid of the beds, so the players were only doing half a day's training.
Oh, I have you.
Right?
Well,
yeah.
jeepers.
Yeah. So he had it. That's the way he had it done, and the man Marsh came in and totally changed it all. Got rid of the beds, got rid of that, and then as I said to Eddie on Saturday, we just looked. We could run for 15, 20 minutes, and that was it.
Joe, John was hitting the point there, Joe, that Leeds weren't fit enough as a team. They weren't fit enough. They lost their fitness coach, was it?
No. To me, when Marcelo Bielsa left and Marsh came in, he changed. I know you heard it, Joe. When Bielsa was there, he built dormitories, bedrooms on the training ground, so that at a certain time of the day, we said 1 o'clock, instead of the players going home to relax, they'd go off into the dormitory and they'd sleep for 2 or 3 hours, and then they'd come back out. They'd have something to eat or light training again, and then they'd go home. When Marsh came in, he stopped all that. So to me, then all the players lost all that extra fitness that they were getting.
Yeah.
And it showed in the thing. And I'm sure if you look at Leicester as well, Joe, like Tielemans wasn't the same player for some reason, whether it was up in his head. But I think that the same thing with them. I don't think they were fit enough either.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I find that strange because I saw an interview with James Maddison, and Maddison was talking about Rodgers' philosophy and what have you. And they were talking about how at that point Leicester were always chasing back and getting back to try and win the ball and what have you. And he said, well, yeah, he said, when you play for Brendan Rodgers, he said, that's part of your job. That's a huge part of your job, because after all, as Brendan says, soccer is still, or football is still a running game. There's no getting away from it. And that was Bielsa. I mean, Bielsa's style was vertical integration, and they just kept going and coming at you the whole time, know. And of course, people talked about him and said that, well, they were overtrained, so people use whatever to whatever way they want, and they really don't know what's going on. But if it's so typical of a new guy coming in and saying, "Oh, we're not going to do that anymore." And you see the bad side of it from there, And it's I thought in the beginning that Jesse Marsh was going to be okay. I really thought.
Yeah, I thought the same, Joe. But
I thought he had the same philosophy as Bielsa, or he was a disciple of that. And when I saw them in that first match of the season, when Aronson was running around like a chicken with his head chopped off, I thought to myself, oh God, they're going to be exactly the same. But then that stopped. Yeah.
And it stopped because they didn't keep going with the fitness. And again, I think he stuck to what the system he wanted to play rather than the fitness of the players.
Lads, there's a picture after coming up there by mistake. In front of you, I know you can see Jim Hines. He's the first athlete to go under 10 seconds. He passed away. We're going to pay tribute to him. Next week, Jim Hines. I can't get his picture off. I don't know where it's gone. But that was Jim Hines. He won the 100 meters in the 1968 Olympics, and we had stuff lined up. And Sorry, Jim. That was Jim Hines. I know. Do you remember him winning the? But we'll do a full tribute to him next week's show. That's Jim Hines who won.
Where were the '68 Olympics?
Mexico City.
Is it in Mexico City?
Mexico.
Do you remember Bob Beamon?
Bob Beamon.
Bob Beamon, yeah.
Yeah.
And wasn't that the Black Power salute as well?
Was it in Mexico?
No, I thought that was 72.
Yeah, that was Munich, wasn't it?
That Munich?
I think
Was it
so,
Munich?
yeah.
You could
I
be
think
right,
so, yeah.
John. That was. Yeah.
It was definitely Munich because there was a big thing about doing it in Germany.
Oh yeah. Now you're right. Now that 1972. Yeah. But
I think anyway.
Well, that was the same. That was the same Olympics that the Israeli athletes.
That's right.
Yeah.
Or the murder, or there was a film.
Yeah.
A couple of films made about it, a documentary as well. That was horrific.
Yeah.
That was just horrific at the time. It was just really.
Yeah, it was. Wasn't there an Australian guy involved in that as well, in the Black Power salute?
The Australian athlete separated the two Americans. Remember, he won the silver, but nobody. I don't remember his name. To my Smith was the one of the Americans, and I forget. There's a terrific documentary on that on Netflix, and I advertised Netflix. I watched one night, and it was just fantastic. That it's not very long. I think it's about 50 minutes long, but it's just terrific. You know, a terrific time. It captured the time now. But anyway, so now, John, who's the favourite, do you think, for Leeds? Have you any info for us for Leeds United managerial job? I mean, I'm not, just to tell you, I'm not interested.
So you don't want the job? Is that what you're telling us?
No.
All the millions you're making on this program you couldn't be tempted away from it.
Well, John, your sound is gone. John, is it? Your sound is off. But don't worry about that. It's okay. We're finished anyway for this edition of SportsView. Until we meet again next Monday night from John Lonergan. John will have the manager in situ by next Monday night for us for Leeds United. Joe may have the manager for Leicester City, but we have our own manager for Luton Town. So from Joe, John, and myself, till we meet again, lads. Take care and slán that.
Good night.